there is something truly special about the Ori franchise. The developers, Moon Studios, absolutely nailed this incredible feeling of being so tiny and achieving such dramatically huge things, yet also focusing so deeply on a captivating yet simple storyline, which was filled with melodrama, bittersweetness, and intense emotion, coupled with incredible gameplay, art, colour, and music in their first game, Ori and the Blind Forest, back in 2015. 5 years later, to the day, the independent team of developers from all across the world, and backed by the full force of Xbox Game Studios Publishing, the talented team at Moon Studios have done it all over again. Ori and the Will of the Wisps is purely and simply art in video game form. The design of this metroidvania-style action platformer is truly unique. Crisp visual design with so much beauty in its choice of colour, not to mention its hand-painted and intricate level design, with deep layers of foreground, middle ground, and background art that is sublimely created and positioned using incredible parallax to give a sense of depth to what is essentially a two-dimensional game. The areas you explore in this vast map change from gorgeous verdant forests and picturesque treetops to dry deserts, beautifully coloured underwater scenes, treacherous caverns filled with bodies of dead insects and dangerous footings, and so much more. The way each area is connected and seamlessly links two different biomes with the game's winding map design and traversal of these areas is something that is almost unmatched in any platformer that I've played. The way the player learns new abilities and traversal skills throughout the game allows not only to find creative ways to traverse the game's areas as you progress through the story, but also, in typical Metroidvania style, inspires you to return to areas you've already visited, to find secrets, more abilities, and to improve your health and energy stats. Some of the traversal puzzles are quite difficult and require thinking outside the box occasionally in order to progress. But thankfully, a very forgiving autosave system allows you to use trial and error to your benefit, and there is no significant loss of progress as there is in games more focused in the roguelike genre. I died a lot in Ori and the Blind Forest, and I died a lot in Will of the Wisps, but thankfully, death is just a part of the game's mechanics and doesn't leave you crushed at huge loss of progress, which I, for one, am thankful for. The combat in Ori 2 has been highly improved also. The player now has the use of multiple weapons or abilities to give more freedom in the way you want to deal with enemies. At any one time, Ori can have 3 abilities equipped, mapped to the X, B, and Y buttons, and can be changed on the fly by holding the left trigger. This freedom means you can easily adapt your combat style to the type of enemy you face, whether you require close range attacks with the sword-like default attack ability, or you want something heavier or slower yet more powerful, healing abilities or ranged abilities like the spirit bow or fireball, or even to have a gorgeously designed auto-attacking butterfly assist you in combat at the press of a button. As you progress, you get more and more hot swappable abilities, but you also unlock new traversal mechanics like air dashing, bashing off enemies or projectiles, which can be also very helpful in combat scenarios too, launching yourself mid-air to reach heights previously unattainable, underwater dashing and drilling through soft sand. There are a lot of buttons to think about as you traverse different areas, especially during the game's signature escape sequences, which make a return from the original title. But as you begin to learn each move and use them more and more, you begin a certain flow of button presses and knowing when to trigger each move, and it gives a real sense of progression and power, even though Ori himself is such a small figure in this sometimes huge and imposing world. With improvements to combat being so integral to this sequel, the addition of boss fights breaks up the escape sequences when completing main quests, or reaching significant story beats, and these are no less impressive than the eponymous escapes. Ori is tiny in comparison to these boss creatures, and they are imposing, screen-hogging and dangerous. Using all your learned skills, you battle against these beautifully crafted enemies, all intent on complete destruction of Ori, and some of them are more difficult than others. I had particular trouble on one of the final bosses that I fought, the giant spider, and unfortunately, thanks to my incompetence partly, as well as inconvenient graphical glitches and occasional black screen issues, but also a frustrating level of health on the boss and again, my incompetence, this boss took much longer to defeat than I had hoped. But in general, the bosses were tough, but not to the point of infuriation. The combat, however refined, could definitely be improved upon. Bosses' hitbox can be problematic, some attacks are really hard to see coming, and the boss can sometimes be erratic and seem to attack without any preemption. But this is all part of the game's difficulty and could be there by design, so I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. And it definitely doesn't take away from the magnificence of Ori and the Will of the Wisps. The spectacle of these boss fights is what really shines through though, and this is expanded on in the escape sequences. Everyone who has played Ori and the Blind Forest remembers specifically the water escape scene, which is just so incredibly well put together, backed by an immense soundtrack and incredibly tough. These are similar of course, and it's a unique feature in Ori games that I really love, so I'm glad that they make their return. The music ramps up, the whole world is crumbling around you or trying to destroy you, and the satisfaction of completing both the boss fights and the escape sequences is undeniable. Heart-racing moments of tension and pure satisfaction upon completion is something that Ori and the Will of the Wisps nails from start to finish. Despite the beautiful, and I mean truly beautiful in a way that can really not be expressed in words, artwork, the incredible level design, great and emotive story, and everything else in between, there is something that really sets Ori above anything else in the industry, in particular games of this caliber or genre, and that is the music from composer Gareth Coker. The music in Ori and the Blind Forest was incredible as well, and the sequel takes this to new heights. Each area has its own theme and score, each boss fight is complemented by a high energy and perfectly matched composition. The dramatic story, thanks to the game's almost entirely absent voice work, is permeated and underpinned by the soundtrack itself, and the emotion that seeps into every pore of this title is held together by the incredible work of the composer and the musicians behind the soundtrack. This is, in my opinion, one of the most incredible musical scores ever created and rivals some of the most classic soundtracks from across the industry. Coker has proven that the first game was definitely not a fluke, and if you're a fan of video game music at all, I highly recommend listening to his score and experiencing this game even if it's simply for its music. The main theme is unforgettable, the way the music is used to accentuate the different levels and areas perfectly achieved, and makes what is already visually the most beautiful game ever created a delight for the senses. Ori and the Will of the Wisps is a phenomenal experience. It's a beautiful and artistic creation that doesn't lean on its gorgeous design as simply an aesthetic success, but uses each and every part of itself to create an immense title filled with genre-leading traversal, pristine level design, platforming genius, fun puzzles, great combat, a range of abilities and customization for players to get immersed in, and is backed by a soundtrack unlike any other. The addition of NPCs scattered through the world gives this game less of a feeling of isolation than the first title, and expand the game with small yet exploratory side quests, and a feeling that there are others affected by the darkness that has enveloped the forest. From the adorable Mockies to the awesomely designed Tok and Lupo characters, to name just two, who you can find across the game's world and who are used for bites of lore, purchasing maps, and much more. The boss fights, new enemy types, escape sequences, and improvements to combat make fighting just as fun as traversing the world, and the sheer beauty of every single pixel makes the Will of the Wisps a joy to behold. There are negatives, including a serious number of bugs that I encountered throughout my playtime. ranging from minor like frame stutters and drops, long load times into certain areas or after death, to audio glitches where some of the audio channels would just entirely drop out. This particularly occurred during that spider boss fight for me as well. There are some more frustrating and nearly game-breaking issues like getting nothing but a black screen with Ori's health and energy bars at the bottom, visual glitches again during the spider boss fight that cause flickering and flashing across the entire screen, and one time where launching the game caused my actual console to shut down. These are incredibly unacceptable, especially after the game's predecessor was so smooth and free of any of these issues. And I understand Moon Studios are working hard to resolve some of these, but I have to mention them even though they didn't really change my overall opinion of the game. Just be aware that even on the Xbox One X, I don't know about PC because I only played it on the console version, there are some bugs and technical issues that will hopefully be fixed eventually, but you should definitely know about going in. Overall, however, these problems play second fiddle to how excellent this title is. There is a majesty to Ori and the Will of the Wisps, with so much passion and love put into the crafting of this highly detailed, beautiful world with a beautiful story to go along with it, with moments where you will laugh, you'll cry, you'll smile bittersweetly, and you'll no doubt be affected by what an incredible job the developers have done to make this game such a work of art and perfection. Two of my favourite games of all time are Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3, and there are times in Ori and the Will of the Wisps where I was transported back to playing these games as a kid. The way the music works in certain areas to create a specific atmosphere, the use of lighting, the supremely well-designed platforming traversal, it all comes together in a way that the DK Country series did and hooked me in so many years ago. Ori and the Will of the Wisps should be celebrated and appreciated, and I cannot recommend this game enough to anyone who is looking for both high tension and incredible gameplay, as well as a heartfelt story that subverts expectations, makes you look at the world in shades of grey, and will bring you to tears as it tells its incredible story all the way to the game's bittersweet, beautiful, and brilliant end.